In the year 1066, the death of a childless English king plunged the prosperous realm into chaos. Across the Channel, a Norman duke with a fierce ambition saw his moment to claim the throne. He was a violent soldier, descended from Viking settlers, and a ruler of a powerful duchy. This duke claimed the former king had promised him the English crown as a lawful, binding gift. To solidify this claim, he declared that the most powerful English earl had sworn a sacred oath. This earl, the Saxon commander, was now the newly elected king of England, a man of Wessex. When news of the Saxons' coronation reached Normandy, the duke accused him of breaking his sacred vow. He immediately ordered the construction of a massive invasion fleet, a force destined for England's shores. 700 boats were built in a remarkably short amount of time for the coming invasion. The Duke gathered an army of roughly 7,000 men, a mix of infantry and cavalry. His force was comprised of his own Norman levies, allies from Flanders, Brittany, and France. The strength of his invasion force lay in his heavily armored knights, a rare sight in England. He also commanded 1,000 archers, whose longbows and crossbows could rain down deadly arrows. However, this powerful army was forced to wait on the coast for 45 long days. Unfavorable winds kept the massive fleet trapped in port, testing the Duke's patience and resources. Finally, on September 28th, his army landed unopposed on the soft beaches at Pevensey. Meanwhile, the Saxon king was on the other side of England, facing another grave threat. A Viking army, led by a fearsome Norwegian king, had invaded the northeast of the country. This invasion force was supported by the Saxon king's own exiled and embittered younger brother. At Fulford, near York, the 10,000-strong Viking army annihilated the northern English forces. The Saxon king, hearing this news, rode north from London with extraordinary speed to meet them. His rapid march caught the Viking invaders completely unprepared on the banks of the River Derwent. At Stamford Bridge, the English army charged and utterly slaughtered the surprised Scandinavian invasion force. But as the Saxon king celebrated his victory, messengers brought dire news from the south. Another enemy awaited him in Sussex, burning villages and seizing goods from his own lands. With his tired and battered army, he raced south again, arriving in London on October 6th. Against the advice of his counselors, he decided to march immediately to confront the Norman Duke. His housecarls, a corps of professional soldiers, were armed with deadly double-handed battle axes. These axes were fearsome weapons, capable of cleaving a man and his horse in a single blow. The king's primary tactic was the famed shield wall, a solid barrier of his toughest soldiers. He chose to fight this battle on foot, without cavalry and with very few archers available. His army took up a powerful defensive position at the top of a long, shallow slope. On the morning of October 14th, the Norman army advanced to meet the Saxon forces. The Norman Duke arranged his army in 3 sections, with himself commanding the powerful center. His Breton allies formed the left flank, while Flemish knights made up the right wing. The battle began around 9 in the morning, with the Normans attacking up the steep slope. The Saxon king's position gave him a clear advantage against the Norman cavalry and archers. The first Norman assaults were repelled by the strength and discipline of the English shield wall. The ferocity of the English defense broke the Norman left flank, threatening a general retreat. A rumor quickly spread through the ranks that the Norman Duke himself had been slain in battle.
All is lost.
Seeing the crisis, the Duke removed his helmet to show his face, rallying his fleeing men. His knights turned and surrounded a large group of pursuing Englishmen on a small hillock. These Saxon soldiers were cut down to the last man, a costly error for their king. The Norman Duke then employed a shrewd tactic, the feigned flight, pretending to retreat again. This ruse tempted more English soldiers to break formation, only to be surrounded and destroyed. For hours, the bloody combat continued, a brutal battle of attrition that exhausted both sides. The slope became slippery with blood, making it difficult for either army to fight effectively. After 6 hours of slaughter, the Norman Duke saw the English shield wall begin to weaken. He ordered his archers to fire high, sending a storm of arrows down upon the English ranks. In this final desperate phase of the battle, the Saxon King's 2 brothers were slain. Then, a chance arrow struck the English king, piercing him and delivering a mortal wound. With their king and his brothers dead, the English line finally gave way to the Normans. The surviving housecarls rallied in small groups, fighting to the death around their fallen lords. The Norman wave washed over them, ending the battle in a decisive, bloody victory. The Saxon king's body was so terribly mutilated that it could only be identified by his mistress. Roughly 4,000 of the Anglo-Saxon army died that day on the battlefield at Hastings. The Norman Duke had lost 2,000 of his own men in the brutal day-long struggle. The victor marched north to London, securing key fortresses like Dover along the way. The great men of England, including the northern earls, came to him and submitted. On Christmas Day 1066, the Norman Duke was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey. But the conquest was not over. Rebellions quickly broke out across the defiant English kingdom. In the north, a general rising, supported by Danish and Scottish forces, threatened his new rule. The new king responded with unmatched cruelty in an event known as the Harrying of the North. He systematically destroyed houses and crops, causing a terrible famine that killed over 100,000 people. In the west, the Saxon king's surviving sons launched raids from Ireland, but were defeated. The final English resistance, centered in the marshes of Ely, was crushed by the year 1071. With all opposition eliminated, the Norman conquest of England was brutally and efficiently complete. A new ruling class was installed, and a wave of castle building began across the land. The new king united the province under one monarch, changing the course of its history forever. His victory rested on sharp military understanding, bold leadership, and a willingness to be ruthless.